All right, welcome back into another edition of Sports Spotlight. I am Alex Eisman, as always, joined by DeShawn Johnson, and this is going to be a fun one. We get a little rivalry banter going on, one of us on each side of it. So I'm excited. I know a lot of people around Michigan are excited for the Wolverines and Spartans to take the court tonight in Ann Arbor. First place in the Big Ten on the line. It's a rivalry. Just how are you feeling, headed into this, DeShawn?
Like you said, it's the rivalry matchup that everyone around, in the Michigan area has been waiting on. I'm really excited because, at different seasons, and I think we'll talk about, maybe like last year a little bit. It's a little bit different. I can't remember the last time these two teams specifically, especially with this expanded conference now, fighting for the top spot in the Big Ten. I think it's not just exciting for each of us on the side of it, but just it's cool in general to see both of these Michigan teams obviously on top. As we near towards the later part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, this is when both teams are good, and granted, I'll give you that Michigan has been the more volatile of the two, where MSU has been kind of solid. But when both teams are good, this is 100% one of the best rivalries in college basketball. And with Michigan's struggles last year, finishing last in the Big Ten, now they're in first, trying to hold State off for that spot. I mean, it's you can't ask for anything more out of this. It's awesome. And you got to give credit to Dusty May for sure. This will be the first matchup between him and Tom Izzo in their careers. So that'll be another kind of interesting thing to look at through this. But I guess first question I got for you, as the Spartans come into this one on a road environment, what's kind of what do they need to do right on the road? Because it hasn't always been easy for them, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been talking around, with a lot of different people just about, like kind of the Spartans game plan going into this game. And honestly, a lot of these Big Ten matchups is that, there is a couple of things, the Spartans, as well as they've been doing this season, to stay towards the top spot of the Big Ten, there has been some issues, that you can kind of see clearly as, they go through some of their progressions in some of these games. One of them being, and this is going to be obviously big for this matchup, you got, Michigan having, a premier big man on their team in Vlad. Our defense, for our center's defense, it just hasn't been exactly what we've been looking for this year, both on the defense and on the offensive side. Our center play just hasn't been exactly what we've kind of needed it to be. Carson Cooper, he's a big body, he's a great guy, but sometimes he can just get a little bit stiff in the paint. And, he picks up a lot of fouls. He's kind of, he's more of a defensive anchor kind of guy. You can look towards him to the basket, but it just doesn't get off in that much. So, I think that's going to be, that's going to have to be one of our big focuses is, just trying to hold things down in the center court. And then point guard play, that's obviously always a big thing for Michigan State. But sometimes when you, like I said, you can't always do the pick and roll game that sometimes they're used to with some of the center play that we have. Jeremy Fears, Trey Holloman, they're going to have to do really well in working that ball around and finding some open shots because Michigan State, obviously not shooting too well from the three this year either. They're going to have to find all the best opportunities they can get.
Yeah, and one thing that I have noticed about MSU in particular is their depth in particular is both a gift and a curse kind of, because you have all these guys on the team who are playable and can be very effective in a college basketball game. It feels like throughout this season there hasn't really been a go-to guy on a nightly basis that can score for them when they need it. How would you kind of break down that aspect of the roster and what they need in order to keep pace with a Michigan offense that's been playing really, really well?
I think Tom Izzo is just going to have to continuously try and make the correct decisions with his rotations. You mentioned this team's got a lot of depth, allowing some players to have these flash moments. And also that kind of creates, a situation where if they're off, they're not getting all the same amount of play time that maybe they're used to or whatever. It's the rotations are just going to have to work out to where, we're finding a way. We're finding the five best guys, at whatever time we need them to be, whether that's more on the defensive side. As you said, Michigan's offense is very potent. So if we're going to have to pick the five best guys that are going to go out there and play defense, then we're going to have to do that. And then in the times where if we're on scoring runs or we need some more scoring, we're going to have to kind of go towards maybe an Xavier Booker over a Carson Cooper, and just maybe go a little bit bigger to try to hold down the centers. Tom Izzo has done a good job this year. Like you mentioned, one of the strongest keys of the Spartans is the depth. And I think the rotations this year have been really good, finding the right times to put in someone like Jackson Kohler where he can do, he's done well playing both sides this year. there. Finding the right times to put Cooper in when you need to play more a bit of a defensive game. Trey Holloman, finding the times where you need to put him in. He's been able to, while we haven't been shooting that great from three, he has been able to find these moments, where like he's able to just get the team going, hit a 3 or 2. And next thing you know, the Spartans are pushing. There's a lot of young guys on this team. There's a couple of veterans. Jaden Akins, he's one of the only guys that's consistently seen this Michigan team over these last couple of years. So we're going to be looking at a lot of different, like I said, just a lot of different rotations, playing off the younger guys, hoping the old guys can come into and, just kind of hold the team down as we get through this.
For sure. And yeah, as good as Michigan's offense is too, they're a team that's shown there are plenty of deficiencies going on throughout the season. Obviously, the most prominent is the turnover issues, dead last in the Big Ten, 14.4 per game, which is just it's unacceptable. And I guess the grace that I've given this team is because it's a brand new roster and they're still they're figuring out how to play together. But we've gotten to the point in the season where it's late February. You've figured it out well enough to be in pole position in the Big Ten. Now it's like if you are a great team, you have to make the right decisions with the basketball and not give a defense like Michigan State's any room to create those transition buckets, create those easy points that are ultimately gonna hurt Michigan in the end.
Something that you mentioned, it's kind of a question that I have for you, just talking about the turnovers. Michigan State, the best showing of their offense this year is what you mentioned. It's in the transition. It's making fast break opportunities. A lot of the times we get in scoring droughts, our half-court offense hasn't been exactly what we wanted to put together this year. So creating these opportunities, does that worry you at all? Obviously Michigan being one of the more turnover-prone teams, in the Big Ten. How do you feel, how does that work out situationally for you guys?
It 100% concerns me, especially because of the type of players that MSU has. They have a lot of really good athletes, a lot of quick guys. Like you said, Jeremy Fears is one of the best passers in the Big Ten. I've actually loved watching him play just because of the vision that he has on the court. Like, he's a great floor general. And so if he gets active in those transition outlet passes, stuff like that, that's going to hurt Michigan. And there's going to be a lot of Spartan fans at Chrysler tonight. I already know. Absolutely. You don't want to give those people any reason to get fired up and be a detriment to the Michigan basketball players on the court.
Another thing I kind of got for you, Alex, just talking about, kind of the energy going into this game, looking at, last year, the Spartans did come away with a season sweep last year. And, Michigan, not exactly the same program that they are this year, and they've proved that to be already. But a lot of, your big-time scorers in last year's games, they weren't the same guys that are on this roster right now. How do you think, there, definitely some guys there, Will Cheddar there, there's multiple guys that have seen this matchup before, and it kind of plays the same way with the Spartans. New guys, young faces coming into this matchup. Do you think anyone could get overwhelmed? How are you thinking they're going to come into this matchup?
I think Michigan's a pretty experienced team, so being overwhelmed in that sort of situation doesn't really worry me, to be honest. Vlad Golden's been to a Final Four. He's a fifth-year senior. Danny Wolf is an upperclassman. He's played in March Madness. Namari Burnett played at Michigan last year. Has experienced the rivalry. So is Roddy Gale for playing at Ohio State the last couple of years. He knows about Michigan State. He doesn't necessarily know about the Michigan-MSU rivalry. Right. But I think, and Trey Donaldson playing Auburn, Alabama, stuff like that, like the lights being too bright, I guess, is not that much of a concern for me. I think it's more, it really is just the execution and I guess not biting off more than you can chew in this game, I guess.
We've seen these matchups, obviously, of course, always be very exciting. Sometimes they can get a little rowdy, a little physical. What are you thinking, Dusty's, game plan kind of going into this matchup? Is he, because you can attack this a couple of different ways. You can go in there with the idea of, let's go hit first, be conservative. What are you kind of thinking is going to be like, how are both of these teams going to come out into this matchup?
Well, I think, at least for Michigan, this is going to be a really important Danny Wolf game. Because of his ability to he's a point forward, his ability to stretch the floor. Vlad Golden is going to be, and I'm sure you're going to agree, he's going to be causing problems for the Spartans down low. And Danny Wolf's ability to kind of go inside, outside, and really be unguardable. It's really how unguardable can Danny Wolf be for MSU? I wouldn't say he's the X factor, because I do have another guy in mind for that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this offense is going to run through the big men. Vlad Golden's going to get his points down low, and Danny Wolf is going to have he'll be the one they run the offense through, I think. And the same question goes for you, I guess. What's the path to victory for MSU offensively?
Without kind of bringing up, I agree with you. I got an X factor guy that I'm thinking in my head, but I think the biggest thing for us, as you mentioned, it's clear, Michigan State 10 dunks in their last matchup. We score a lot on the inside. 3-point success hasn't been a big thing for us this year. I'm not saying that we're gonna that's just gonna have to change tonight, and that's not the way we've won games all this season. We're gonna have to find open opportunities though. Whether it's trying to draw Vlad out, maybe bringing in someone like a Booker or something like that. But what we're gonna have to do, Michigan State is gonna have to do their best to not only find offense opportunities in the half court, which obviously hasn't been the biggest strength for them this year, but it's going back to what we talked about earlier, on defense, you're going to have to try and stop this offense. You're going to have to, Michigan being very potent, obviously some inside guys, you're going to have to do your best to kind of just build a wall and create these transition buckets like you've done all year. I think if you can be, this team, like you mentioned, they're very fast. We do got some stagnant guys, but other than that, moving the ball quick in transition, athletes, like I said, 10 dunks in the last game. They're throwing up to everybody from, Coop's getting lobs, Cohen's getting lobs. So it's a very athletic team, and I think they're going to have to use that. I think the idea is to play fast, try not to let this team, kind of cramp up the style in the half-court offense. It's going to have to be a swift ball game for the Spartans.
And another thing that I actually thought of, too, that I can't believe I forgot is Michigan has had a really hard time maintaining second-half leads. That's been a huge story for them this year, and it bit them a couple times earlier in the season. They've gotten fortunate in the last couple games that they've played during this 6-game win streak, I think it was, where they got away with blowing a first-half lead in the second half and still being able to respond and finish and get the win. But it was probably closer than it should have been. Michigan is more talented than a lot of the teams that they played, but it feels like they almost played down to their level of competition with some of these kind of mid-tier Big Ten teams that have caused some issues for them. I think that'll be a big thing. But now, who is your X factor? Tell me who the X factor is for the Spartans.
So I initially kind of had two guys in my mind. I don't think that I kind of give you the runner-up first. I don't think that I can call Xavier Booker my X factor. I do think he's going to be an important key to this game, though. Like I said, with his ability to kind of be a stretch five kind of guy, hopefully pull Vlad out a little bit. But my true X factor, it's going to be the vet. It's going to be Jaden Akins, and I say that because Jaden obviously struggled in his last game against Purdue, and even throughout this season, he's seen some kind of roller coaster moments that I like to call, some really high points and some low points. But looking back at both the Michigan State games last year, Jaden Akins in the very first game against Michigan, they won that game. I believe it was 81-62. Jaden Akins, he finished that game with 23 points, and he was a key factor in that game, multiple three-pointers in that game. And you can see at the end of the box score there, like I said, a 20-point win. However, their second matchup, Jaden he didn't get into the double digits, only 9 points for him in that matchup. And I think that kind of, perfectly describes these up and down moments that Jaden has. But he's the most experienced out of everybody on this team as far as this rivalry goes. He has not seen this exact roster before, nor has he seen Dusty May, but he's kind of seen, the energy that goes into this matchup, the way that Michigan plays, and all this year, he's kind of had to be a go-to guy as far as, we're in a strut, can you get us out? And he hasn't always answered the call, but I think in a matchup like this, he's going to have to be there's obviously some other younger guys that I hope can contribute, but Jaden Akins is definitely going to be my X factor for this game.
For sure, and I'm going to cheat a little bit like you too and give two names. I do have a main one and kind of a secondary one. My secondary one, overall, it's the Michigan guards. It's Namari Burnett, Trey Donaldson. The big one for me is Trey Donaldson. Namari Burnett, I feel like, has been really consistent this year. He's been really efficient. So as long as he is doing what they have him doing, usually on offense, it's standing in the corner and knocking down those threes to hurt you, because he's shooting at an insanely high 3-point percentage right now. But Trey Donaldson is so dynamic, and when he gets hot from three, then Michigan, like, they could turn the ball over 20 times and still win the game because Trey Donaldson is making threes. He is, and I really appreciate this about him. I wouldn't say he's the same level of a floor general as Fears is, but his passing ability is really, he's a great passer. He's got really good vision. Usually the right decisions. I feel like the turnovers come more from the other four on the floor, but he's not absolved of that either. But I just like, he's kind of this, he's like this evolved textbook point guard, because, you know, your textbook point guard is just that floor general, and occasionally he'll get you a couple buckets. He has that, but he also has the ability to shoot the lights out of the gym. And that's where, and he slashes in too. He drives hard at the basket. He's got so many tools in his bag that I think if he's just on tonight and he's doing all those things, Michigan, like, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for MSU to win that one.
Yeah, I think, you know, going back to something you mentioned earlier, I'm hoping that, you know, Michigan State is able to kind of, first of all, I would like to say, I guess, you know, if I had to pick a group that, you know, I guess I'm not, I don't want to use the word worried, but like I want to, you know, kind of have the biggest focus on tonight. You talked about the guards. Ours is going to be our big men. You know, going back to, you know, like their last matchup against Purdue earlier this week, you know, obviously no Edie there no more, but they still kind of rely on this pick and roll game using their big guys out in the middle. And going into that matchup, you know, I was very worried. You know, obviously this is kind of the same way I'm feeling about, you know, this Vlad matchup. But looking at some of the, you know, going back to that game, Michigan State actually outscored Purdue in the paint 42-24. And, you know, that, you know, like just trying to play off that energy. You also talked about, and this is a kind of a funny stat, but you talked about, you know, Michigan being able to hold on to these second half leads. Michigan State in a game previously against Illinois just this past week outscored Illinois 42-24 in the second half to come back and win that game. It's funny numbers there, but I mean, you know, it's just like this team, you know, even in situations where they find themselves down at halftime, they've come out in these second halves, continuing and bringing the fight. You know, I talk about these centers, and I talk about, obviously, you know, like it hasn't been the great play for them this year. And I'm sure, you know, they're well aware that they've kind of been one of the, you know, the weakest link of the team, and the team can only be as good as its weakest link. So I think they've really tried to step it up, and you're going to have to see it again from them tonight. You know, it's going to be a test for sure, I think, for the both of these teams, you know, on both sides, the front court and the back court.
And that brings me to what I wanted to talk about next was when you look at kind of the big picture and the rest of the season, and even the you know, the games that the teams have already played, how important, or I guess for which program is a win more important tonight?
That's a tough question. And you know, like I'm sure you're going to mention, you know, obviously you talked about, you know, Michigan State kind of seeing a little bit more of a consistent success. But, you know, I would just say, you know, as a Michigan State fan, and, you know, as someone that's been following this program for the past couple of years, I would truly like to say it's the Spartans. And I say that because obviously there's still a whole lot more basketball to be played. But I think that just the extra bit of confidence boost that this could give you, you know, to a team getting into these last couple of conference matchups of the season and going right into obviously the big tournament. We've seen, you know, Michigan State with the consistency comes these expectations that are thrusted upon them, and you could definitely argue they have not met, you know, the level of expectations. They're constantly making it to the tournament, but obviously a tough loss last year. You know, after, you know, beating Mississippi State, you kind of get farther, and then you get taken down by North Carolina, and it's just like, where do we go from here? The year before that, you make it into the Sweet 16, and you lose to Kansas, and it's just like Kansas State, and it's just like, we're supposed to be in the Final Four. We're supposed to be in the Final Four, hoping to get to these national championship spots. So I would like to say the Spartans, Michigan State, man. It's just, you know, like these last couple of games, Tom Izzo talks about all the time. You can't take any of them for granted, and you got to, you know, continue to try and win and build on the season as it goes. And like I said, I just think a confidence boost here, continue to stay on top of the Big Ten. It would be huge for the Spartans.
To be honest, I agree with you, but my reasoning is a little more short term, I guess. You know, Michigan right now is a half game. It's a half game lead for the Big Ten. So obviously getting the first place spot is big, but you look at the Spartans' schedule from here on out,
It's tough.
And it is a gauntlet. Like they need it, like a road win too. They need everything they can get if they want to win this conference, because it is such a tough path for the rest of the season for them. Michigan has got, I believe they're at Nebraska after this. Then they have 3 home games against mid-tier opponents, and then it's state again in Lansing. Like I imagine, like they will win the games in between these Michigan-MSU games. Like that, I feel pretty good about. State, I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to win all of those games in between the 2 Michigan games. I don't know if you feel the same way or not, but
I have to agree with you. And it's not so much about the matchups. Like, I mean, like obviously the Big Ten matchups is something, and these are not a lot of the newer teams in the conference. You got Wisconsin, you got Iowa. So a couple of teams that you're used to facing. However, the next 5 games, 3 of them on the road. You only got 2 more games outside the Brez, and I just coming from someone that's been able to be inside that arena multiple times, the boost and the confidence that you're gaining from all these these Spartan fans that are there for you, it's huge. And I mean, moving from one place to the next on the road, you're not getting to come home at all. It is going to be a tough finish for the Spartan team. I mean, you're talking about taking these flights all over the country. I mean, you're going to be tired. You got back-to-backs. It's going to be a tough finish for them. Like I said, I'm not too worried about the matchups, but then you finish up all those games, you get to come home, but you don't get to rest just yet because you got a final matchup against these Wolverines. Obviously, depending on what happens tonight, you could be feeling one way or the other about it. But yeah, it's a tough 5-game stretch to finish up for the Spartans, and they're gonna, like I said, and Izzo talks about taking every one of these wins one by one. You can't take anything for granted, and dropping games now could only lead to frustration and disappointment heading into the back end of the season. So, and they're all Big Ten matchups too. Obviously, like depending on what happens tonight, whether they're leading or not, they definitely want to stay in these top 4 spots, get that double bye heading into the Big Ten championship. Yeah,
and that's, of course, this is extremely important for Michigan too. If you win, if the Wolverines win tonight, they're in the driver's seat for the conference. And it could ultimately mean the Michigan State Michigan game at the end of the season is for nothing more than bragging rights.
Right.
Like that, like Michigan could have the Big Ten locked up by the time they play MSU again if they get the win tonight. So, and that's a big thing, just being able to have that sort of program turnaround within 1 year. And
credit to the Wolverines, 100%. I was a little bit surprised. I totally hear what you're saying as far as short term with the Spartans, but I was surprised to hear you not say, it is more important for the Wolverines just to talk about, this quick turnaround. Obviously, going from worst to first, it's something that people talk about all the time. But I mean, the Wolverines, clearly have the potential to be able to finish that up this year, and it would be a great turnaround. Obviously, you still have the Big Ten championship to play and see how all that goes out before the tournament. But I mean, just to talk about where they are as far as the standings, that's a huge turnaround. You can tell all the guys are committed. We've got the chance to obviously talk with a lot of them this year so far, and I mean, you can see the commitment there and everything. I think you can see it from both sides, and I think that's what makes this rivalry matchup even a little bit more fun. It's not just Michigan State. It's Michigan and Michigan State for the lead of the Big Ten. It's potentially Michigan and Michigan State battling out in the Big Ten championship. Like, there's just so many different components that can come into this that makes this rivalry just that much more fun. So, I mean, like you said, super important for both of these teams, whichever way you look at it.
Yes, very, very excited. Can't wait for it to be 8 p.m. tonight. We know who we're picking already. I want to hear the score prediction, though, and how you think the game's going to play out.
I mean, there's not going to be any easy buckets for the Spartans. I'm just saying that now. Unless we're able to make these transition opportunities, nothing's going to be easy. So, I don't think it's going to be as much of a big win as maybe these past years where I'm thinking a decent scoring game. Both of these teams been able to put up points this year. I'm thinking this game falls somewhere in like the 70s area. I'm calling like 70-75. Spartans take it by 5.
Okay, so we're actually like pretty close there. My score is 72-66 Michigan.
Okay.
I think Michigan chucks up a lot of threes.
Yep.
I think it's going to be kind of a track race, and Michigan will turn the ball over a decent amount. But I'm banking on that their shooting kind of helps them get out of some of the problems that they create with the turnovers, and they kind of. I don't want to say I want to see them play zone tonight because of how was it Indiana that went
Yes.
2-3 against the Spartans? Yep. But I want to see them kind of mix it up defensively and make MSU shoot threes, because they're the worst team in the Big Ten at doing that.
Yes.
So I'll take open threes over open twos tonight, 100 times out of 100. It's not going to be the highest scoring game. It's probably going to be a little ugly, but I don't think it's going to be like low 60s, high 50s ugly, you know?
Yeah, no, I think I think both these teams are gonna have the capability to figure out, I don't think it's going to be, one of the, a pure defensive game. But I will say that, I'm kind of hoping you guys don't come out in a zone defense. I don't know. Like Michigan State's half court offense has just been so hard to find, some of these opportunities that I think we've been looking for this year. So come out and man, maybe let some of our guys try and look for some open lanes. We'll have to see. I am super excited though.
For sure. Well, one of us is going to be really happy. One of us is going to be really sad after high school hoops tonight. So make sure you tune in for that at 10 and 11. We're also bringing you 5 games of high school basketball. And, of course, we'll be talking all about this game during the show as well. So appreciate you joining us. And we'll see you with Digital Desk again next week. But later tonight, high school hoops.